Who's a historical figure that people never talk about, good or bad?
This man right here, Joe Kennedy Jr. If you're not familiar with Joe Kennedy Jr., he's the older brother of these three men, with whom you probably are: President John F. Kennedy, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, and Senator Ted Kennedy. Joe Kennedy Jr. was the oldest of the Kennedy children, and the one in which their father, Joe Kennedy Sr., had the most confidence would be a successful politician and eventually president of the United States. Joe Kennedy Sr. was a Harvard-educated Irish-American businessman who in the early 1900s made a ton of money in stocks, banking, and selling a lot of this stuff. Joe Kennedy Sr. used his money and influence to set his sons up for political futures, specifically his oldest son, Joe Jr., who he believed had the talent and the skill to actually become president of the United States one day. And everything was going to plan until World War II. Joe Kennedy and John F. Kennedy both served in World War II. Joe Kennedy with the Army Air Corps and John F. Kennedy in the Navy. And this is where the story gets interesting. John F. Kennedy commanded a small torpedo boat that was sunk by a Japanese destroyer. Two of his men died instantly during the attack, and one was badly injured. While Kennedy and his surviving men clung to the floating wreckage in the middle of the ocean, Kennedy spotted a small island 3 miles from their position, directed his men to swim towards it. The man who was injured, however, couldn't make the swim, so Kennedy took the strap from the man's life jacket, held it in his teeth, and swam the 3 miles, dragging him in the ocean the entire way until they got to safety. It was because of these acts, and honestly a whole lot more he did on that mission, that JFK was awarded the Navy Marine Corps Medal, one of the highest honors he could have possibly received. This was great and all for John F. Kennedy, but a pretty big surprise to Joe Kennedy. I mean, he was always the rock star of the family, and now his less impressive little brother, who no one had any confidence in, was showing him up with a Distinguished Military Award. He was not about to let that slide. Joe Kennedy Jr. volunteered for an experimental mission that essentially converted an aircraft into a giant bomb. The plan was for him to take a plane that was packed with explosives and fly it toward the Germans' munition plant, where he would bail out at the right time, and an early version of radio control would guide the plane toward the munitions plant, but it exploded in the air and his body was never found. His death forced Joe Kennedy Sr. to shift his presidential ambitions to his second son, John, who did become president, was assassinated in 1963, and Robert F. Kennedy, who ran for president, was assassinated in 1968. Videos on both those guys coming pretty soon.